He is a training assessor accredited by FACET, the Sector of Education and Training Authority, SETA, for finance and accounting, management consulting, and other financial services. He has a massive experience. In fact, he has an international experience because he has not only been working in his country, SA, to help the likes of South African Reserve Bank, Mercedes Bank, City of Cape Town, but also has worked with MTN in Eswatini, and also has offered services in Lesotho, to name a few, but maybe he has, to name a few, he has worked with Central Bank of Lesotho, and also has helped our very own Institute of Internal Auditors in their annual fraud ethics CPD courses and a 3-day aspect of fraud IIAT module. So let us welcome Mario on stage. And Mario, thank you so much. Over to you, and we are ready to have this knowledge from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Puleng, and good morning, ladies and gents. Just want to make sure everybody can see the slide. Thanks for the introduction, Puleng. Ladies and gents, this short session is basically, I want to unpack a sub-Saharan Africa fraud survey that we did at the end of last year, so 6 months ago. We contacted key people in sub-Saharan Africa and asked them basically 3 categories of questions. What happened during 2020? 2020 was a catastrophic year for most people. What happened in terms of fraud? And then what does your current situation look like? As at December 2020, what does your current situation look like? And then what do you predict for 2021 and beyond? And I'm going to bring a few other surveys in to compare to what we have found. So these were the countries that responded: South Africa, Eswatini, Namibia, Lesotho, Kenya. We had a very good response. So let me take you through some of the questions. What happened in 2020? So 61% of respondents had fraud, 61%. 39% said not applicable, we didn't have fraud, or we don't think we had fraud. Remember, a lot of people are not looking for fraud, so they assume there is no fraud. So yes, the majority, 2/3, suffered fraud. A lot of frustration coming from these people who are risk managers, internal auditors, CFOs. Here's one of the quotes: preliminary fraud investigation done, report, recommendations, then management does nothing about it. How frustrating. We then asked, what is your most effective fraud detection method? 42% said whistleblower. Ladies and gents, do your organizations have a hotline or some sort of mechanism that's anonymous and confidential? If you've got an in-house hotline, how can it be anonymous and confidential? People will not trust it. It needs to be external and communicated regularly to people to say, these are the categories of calls that are coming through, and so on, so that it becomes alive to them. This correlates perfectly with the ACFE's report to the nations global fraud survey, where they found also globally 42% of fraud is detected through whistleblowers and tips. So very important to have that. What do you think was the key issue driving fraud risk? 42% of respondents said distracted employees because they're working from home. They're anxious. A lot of them had cabin fever. Imagine sitting at home for months after being used to being free. Inability to verify goods and services. So I'm showing you this to show you what happened and that you can communicate this to management. Because a lot of times management, they don't subscribe to these global fraud surveys. And when you start talking to management about fraud risk, they have this glazed look because why? We don't have fraud. Everybody here is honest. So last year, an interesting article was published in Forbes magazine. Why the largest cyber attack in history could happen within 6 months. And there were quite a few cyber attacks in the last year since COVID-19. So let's look at why. This is the original attack surface. So this is going back 20 years or more. That's your local area network. So it's like having a house underground with one door. So if anybody wants to get into your system, they've got one door to get through, you've got one door to guard. Since then, IT has evolved, and we've got remote workers, cloud apps, the Internet of Things, remote offices, all sorts of people accessing Wi-Fi, internet in your premises. The risks have increased. Your exposure has increased. And that was pre-COVID-19. Post-COVID-19, this is what it looks like, ladies and gents, because you've got thousands of people working from home. So no longer as the criminal do I have to come and look at your company and say, how many doors and windows do you have if I want to burgle you? Now I've got hundreds, if not thousands, of employees to target, and all I need is one of them to have inadequate security or to do something wrong, and I'm into your system. In addition to that, what about all the mobile phone users? 97% of organizations faced mobile threats, of which 46% had at least one employee who downloaded a malicious application. And I'm still amazed how many people are bringing their phones to work, bring your own device, and nobody's checking to see what security they've got on there. Often I speak to people and I say, you've got an iPhone or a Samsung Note 9 or 10 or whatever it is. What antivirus do you have? Antivirus? They don't have antivirus on their phone. Yet it's a mini computer that we're carrying around with us. Add to this, ladies and gents, the working from home, the mobile phones, the fraud and corruption that's been going on for the last 100 years. So this was a survey called Risk and Focus 2021, done by the Chartered Institute of Internal Auditors. 25% of CAEs said bribery, fraud, and other financial crime is a top 5 risk. Hallelujah. Because in many companies that we go to, we say, is fraud a risk? And they show us their top 10 risks, and fraud and corruption is not there. How can it not be there, ladies and gents? It doesn't have to be your top risk, but it needs to at least be in your top 10. So I'm glad that at least 25% of CAEs have placed it in their top 5 risks. The next category, we asked, what does your current situation look like? What is the biggest fraud threat to your business currently? 60% said employees. Nothing new there again, ladies and gents. We compare this to the ACFE's Global Fraud Survey. Employees are the #1 risk. Obviously, that's why it's called occupational fraud. Very difficult for me as an outsider to defraud Lesotho Electricity Company or the Central Bank of Lesotho or MTN or any other company if I don't work there. Once you hire me, I now can see where the Achilles heels are and exploit them if I want to. Now, there have been a few surveys done on what type of employees are there in businesses, in organizations. And they came up with 3 categories of employees. And the most recent survey was done in 2016, where they said 3 types of employees: those that are engaged, they're committed, they are loyal. Those that are not engaged, they don't care if they work there, they don't care. They don't follow the rules, they don't follow the policies, procedures, guidelines, they just don't care. They just want their salary check. And then you've got those that are actively disengaged, those employees that want to see the organization lose money and suffer because they hate their boss, they hate the organization. Now, if we look at sub-Saharan Africa, on average, 17% of employees consider themselves engaged. 17%, ladies and gents. 65% couldn't care, and 18% consider themselves actively disengaged. I wonder where your organization sits with your employees. Because remember, a lot of fraud is committed, they are allowed in by accident because people are not following the procedures. So that middle bit, that 65%, is very important. You know, this relates to the culture of the organization. And one of the respondents to our sub-Saharan Africa fraud survey said the culture of corruption is taken as the norm. It's normal. Everybody's doing it. When we look around us, the bosses are doing it, the people below me are doing it, the juniors, the seniors, everybody, seemingly. We then asked, of the 18 most common anti-fraud controls, which are the top 5 that you rely on the most to prevent and detect fraud? There are the top 5, ladies and gents. Code of conduct, hotline, internal audit department. So management is relying on the internal audit department to detect and prevent fraud. Number 4, anti-fraud policy, and then employee fraud training. Now, you have active controls and passive controls. So we've color-coded them. The green are your active controls. They don't appear in the top 5. The top 5 internal controls are all passive. Some are potentially active or passive, like the hotline, like the internal audit department. I do a lot of training for the IIA, ladies and gents, and when I speak to audit managers, chief audit executives, most of them tell me, we don't have time to look for fraud. We've got other commitments that we stick into. If we find fraud, it's by accident. So we are not an active control. It's not our job. We have 3 lines of defense. We are the 3rd line of defense, not the 1st line of defense. But yes, some internal audit departments have got the luxury of having software to detect fraud, and they are using it to detect fraud, and they're very successful. But if you have a look at the ACFE survey, the number 1 method of detecting fraud is the whistleblowing mechanism. Number 2 is management review of reports. Number 3 is internal audit, which comes in at about 13%. External audit comes in at about 5%. So we can see by the statistics that it's not internal audit's job to fight fraud. They are there to advise management. So they are not an active control. They can be if they have enough people and technology to do it. So I just want to look at 2 of these, the anti-fraud policy and the hotline. One of the comments in the survey was, we've got a hotline, but no one's using it. Employees are protecting their jobs by keeping quiet. So the company's actually wasting their money by subscribing to this hotline. That's why it's so important, ladies and gents, to have an anonymous confidential facility. One of the organizations has a box, like a suggestion box. So if you see fraud or corruption, you must write it down and put it in that box. And I was doing training at this organization, and I said to them, is anybody using that box? They said, you must be joking. They said, go look where the box is. And there the box was in front of the lifts. And there's a camera. And they said, the camera will see exactly who put stuff in there. So no, nobody's using the box. You've got to make it easy for people, ladies and gents. We go so far as to say to people, if you feel uncomfortable about using the Deloitte's tip-offs line or whistleblowers, don't use your own laptop. Go to an internet cafe and make your report there, protecting yourself. Because you never know what can happen. And there's been too much victimization with whistleblowers. Now let's look at policies. When we speak to management, oh, we've got policies. Are they working? Yes, everybody's read them. Everybody's signed compliance. Oh, really? Have you ever asked the people? And that's why whenever we do training, ladies and gents, we survey the staff before and after the training, and they open up to us. You know, there's a saying, a prophet is not without honor, except in his own hometown amongst his own family. Very few people will tell people close to them, but they'll tell outsiders if you ask. So here's another survey from Tessian. You don't have to read through the whole lot. Basically, they asked two lots of questions. They asked the bosses, IT leaders, are your employees reading the policies and following them when working from home? 91% of IT leaders said yes. They asked the employees, are you following safe data practices when at home? 48% said no, we're less likely to. There's this disconnect of what management thinks and what's actually happening. And that's the power of using surveys to get feedback from internal and external stakeholders. Third category and last category, what are you predicting for 2021 and beyond? What type of change do you expect with regard to your overall level of fraud and corruption? 77% said they expect an increase in fraud and corruption during 2021. 48% said significant and 29% said slight increase. So the majority of respondents say, yeah, it's going to get worse. Now, if we look at the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, they asked a similar question, but narrowed it down to what type of frauds are you thinking are going to increase? So there are the top 5. I'm just going to focus on 1 or 2 of them. Phishing and smishing. They're expecting a 91% overall increase. And they're relentless. Here's a message on WhatsApp. Woolworths is giving away 5,000 rands groceries. Now, a friend of mine sent this to me saying, look. And I said, come on, can you see Woolworths giving away free 5,000 rand groceries? Let's be realistic here. Let's use logic. They want to support the nation during the corona pandemic. And there's the URL. Now, it's on your phone. It's small. You'd be tempted to tap it and go and see, ladies and gents. There, let's make it bigger. It's so critical to train your employees to understand what does that URL mean. There we break it down with the domain, the subdomain, the top-level domains, the protocol. And you can see this is woolworths.com.za-grocery.club. No such thing. There's the legitimate Woolworths. Woolworths.co.za. And you'll notice in my bar, it's green. And you can click on that. And when you click on that, it opens up. They are confirming that we've identified it. You can trust it. It is Woolworths. Either that bar will be in your browser, green, saying that 99% you can trust it. Or it'll be amber, be careful. We've had a few complaints. Or it'll be red, malicious, don't go there, don't click on it. And many employees don't understand these different colors on the browsers. And you can go and view the certificate. Too much trouble for some people, but it's critical to train them. So if they do click on a link, they can't say, oh, but you didn't tell me. It's your fault, employer. It's your fault, internal audit. Why didn't you advise me? There are 6 social media domains, ladies and gents. Have a look at them. Maybe just go into the chat and let me know which are the fake ones. I'm sure most of you are using these social media platforms. Just put a number 1, number 4, number 5. Reversen says 5. Well done. Twitter, yes. TVVITTER. It should be W. Nita, yes, well done. No, ladies and gents, number 3, there's nothing wrong with number 3. It looks strange. za.pinterest.com, but that is the actual URL. So number 1 is definitely a fake. It says LLNKED. It should say LINKED. So number 1 and number 5. Well done. Let's look at one more. The other thing that they say is going to, the other risk that's going to increase is cyber breaches related to working from home. Have you Have you audited any of your employees? That should be one of your priorities now, ladies and gents. What is going on at home? Take a sample, go and visit 5 employees and have a look what things look like at their home. There's this website called Router Passwords. It lists every single router and modem that has been manufactured with the default username and password. Now, what I found is when I log on here at home, I pick up my neighbors, depending whether the weather is cloudy or not cloudy. I can pick up sometimes 8, 9, 10 of my neighbors. And some of them have not renamed it. It tells me it's a Netgear RT314. And then I see, okay, the username is admin and the password is admin, or it's 1234. And if I'm a criminal, I can try it. And I don't know what the percentages are, ladies and gents, but there's a good percentage of people that have not changed this password. They've got a password on their laptop, but not on their router. So these are the type of things we need to say to employees. What have you got a password on your router? You can't audit everyone. You may have 10,000 employees. You can't go and visit all 10,000 employees, but at least train them, make them sign compliance declarations. So if something does, if they don't do it, you can at least discipline them. Otherwise, they're going to say, I'm not an IT person. Nobody told me. You sent me home to work. You didn't give me the tools to do the work. You didn't train me. And of course, online collaboration tools. Zoom gets beaten up a lot, ladies and gents, but there was nothing wrong with Zoom. There is nothing wrong with Zoom. Can all relax. We're on Zoom. There's nothing wrong with it. Teams has got their issues. Google's got their issues. And the problem that we had with Zoom was people sharing the login on public platforms. Here's the Parliament of South Africa sharing a link. No wonder why they were Zoom bombed with pornography. They shared this link in public on Twitter, as did cars.co.za, Cars South Africa, and they were Zoom bombed with pornography. So we just need to understand that we need to have meeting passwords so that no strangers can come in. We have meeting rooms. Lock the meeting room when everybody's in the room. Limit our screen shares. Just be careful of what you have on your screen as a presenter. You could have something confidential. You could have a document that's open, and these are being recorded. So people, it's 1 second and you think, oh, nobody saw it, but they can go back to the recording and say, oh, what did he have open on his laptop? A few more tips, ladies and gents. Try and use pass phrases. Kevin Mitnick has got the reputation of being the world's most famous hacker. And he's saying, use a pass phrase like, I love bolognese. One word, I love bolognese. A dictionary crack will not crack that because there's no such word in the dictionary, I love bolognese. Don't reuse passwords. Again, make people aware that they mustn't use their logon at work for Dropbox and Adobe and all these other things. Use a password manager. Otherwise, people use silly passwords that are easy to guess. And again, Kevin Mitnick recommends using password managers. He recommends some free ones and ones that you pay for. Try and use a virtual private network. Secure tube when transmitting confidential information from home to work. I've got a VPN. If I'm logging on to work, I activate the VPN. What are the operating systems? Some people have gone home and they had a desktop, but they said, don't worry, I've got a laptop at home. So they're using their laptop, but it's got Windows XP. There's no more support for Windows XP. So you think, oh, they're working at home, it's all secure. No, it's not. Just because we're at home doesn't mean we mustn't do backups. So it's critical now to do regular backups. When you go to sleep at night, ladies and gents, you need to advise your employees and colleagues, unplug the hard drive. Don't leave it plugged into your laptop. So if somebody does hack your modem and get into your laptop, they're going to get into your backup at the same time. Unplug it. So if you get hit with a ransomware attack, they've compromised your laptop, but not your hard drive. Make sure employees do regular software patches. We will get warnings. Do you want to patch now or later? Later, I don't have time for this. Later. Later is 10 days later. By then they get hit with a 0-day exploit. Advise the employees working at home to segregate work and home. Don't sit working where the kids can come and play with a laptop. If the people are working in a room and they get up to go and make coffee, close the door like you would do at the office so that nobody can come in, and your kids don't know what they're really doing. They might touch some buttons. Your cat could walk across the keyboard. Anything can happen. Try and secure your personal devices. As I mentioned, have antivirus on your personal devices, on your mobile devices. Use MFA, multi-factor authentication. Critical, ladies and gents. So instead of having one lock on your door, you've got 2 locks or 3 locks. It makes it more difficult for the criminal. He now has to get 3 keys or 2 keys instead of 1 key. It's also called 2-factor authentication. I prefer multi-factor because even 2-factor can be compromised. Don't print sensitive documents. You know, you've got it on your table. You've got all these papers here. The window that may be open, it blows, all these documents blow out. If you do have to print them, lock them away. What about your screen positioning? Let people know that if they, I'm facing my window. So you'll see here, I can make things brighter just by opening my blinds. But I could be sitting this way, which means my neighbor could be sitting with binoculars or a telescope or a zoom lens on his camera and looking what I'm doing on my screen. I'm not saying be paranoid. I'm saying just manage the risk. You don't know who your neighbors are and you could be working on something very confidential, merger and acquisition or something. I've been stressing, ladies and gents, awareness training, security awareness training, fraud awareness training. Training is the missing link in most organizations. They've got the email filters and the intrusion detection and the firewalls. Criminals can get through there if they're not configured properly. And of course, you've sent people home. Is there policy? Do people know what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing? What about the comfort of where people are sitting? Do you want workers' compensation claims? Because you have now sent people home to work, but they're lying at an angle on their bed because they don't have a table to sit at. And they've been sitting like that for months. So as an auditor, you should be saying to people, you can't go and visit everybody's home. Just say to them, photograph where you work, or just do a short video clip so we can see that you're comfortable. So if you do get a workers' compensation claim later, you can say, but you told us this is where you're working. Obviously now you didn't sit there, you sat somewhere else. So we can't be responsible for you. Google gave each employee $1,000 to buy new office furniture. You don't have to go that far, ladies and gents. What about mental health issues? Cabin fever is very real. People are going mad. What are we doing about it? So the managers need to take a bit more interest in their staff members and say, is everything going all right? Caring, a bit more caring. What about fire, weather emergencies? I mean, a family, I think it was a year or 2 ago, burnt to death. Their gas heater exploded during the night. Everything caught fire. They couldn't find the key for the trolley door. They were trapped in their own home. So those are the type of things. Now, we've sent people home. What do the homes look like? Everything was fine at the office, but what about the home? What about injuries? So there was a case where the lady was carrying her papers to the car and she tripped over the dog. And they're working papers. So now she claimed from the business, workers' compensation claim. And her employer is saying, no, but you're working at home. So generally, Occupational Health and Safety Act states that employers are not held liable for accidents at home, but it maintains that employers are still responsible for safe working conditions regardless of the location. That's why it's so important for you in your audits to find out, where are people at home? Are they working in the kitchen? Are they working in the bathroom? Are they sitting outside? Over the next 12 months, what type of change do you expect with regard to the overall budget for anti-fraud programs? 51% of respondents expect that the anti-fraud budget will see no change or even decrease. So The majority, over 70%, say fraud is going to increase, but the majority say our budgets are not going to increase or they're going to go down. Just want to quote the Risk and Focus survey once more from the Chartered Institute of Internal Auditors. They said, let's compare the current top 5 risks compared to what you think is going to be the top 5 risks in 2014. So we're looking now 3-4 years ahead, 3 years ahead. 3 very interesting things. Cybersecurity is going to still be number 1, and it's going to increase by a little bit. Climate change and environmental sustainability is going to increase by quite a lot. That's why the new buzzword is ESG, environmental, social, and governance. But look at this one, ladies and gents. Digitization, new technology, and AI. Look how that's going to increase. And may even overtake cybersecurity. But the two are very closely linked. In a KPMG survey, they looked at technology. Makes interesting reading. Only 3% of fraudsters are detected through proactive data analytics. Yet 24% of the fraudsters use technology to enable the fraud. So the enemy is using technology, but most of the victims are not using technology to fight fraud. Very interesting report from the ACFE, Anti-Fraud Technology Benchmarking Report. They brought it out a few months ago. And most people think about data analytics, but this report discusses data analytics, screen capture software, e-discovery and digital forensic software, case management software, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. That's the future, ladies and gents. As Pauling was saying, the tick mark must die a death. What's the point of looking back a year each time and saying, look what happened a year ago, look what happened to, you need to be able to tell management, look what happened last night. We have prevented this fraud. So I want to end with a quote. The best defense is a good offense. And if you want any of the reports, ladies and gents, just send me an email and I'll gladly share them with you. But you will get a copy of these slides. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mario, for a beautiful presentation. I have learned a lot indeed, and there's a lot to take home. I'm sure it is not just myself, but the rest of participants today.